Hey everybody, my name's Joel Stottlemyre. I'm coming to you from my hot pink bedroom with the big black polka dots on the wall. I'm the founder of the Dryden Experiment and the owner of Dryden House Publishing. And I have on the line with me today from Ballarat, Australia, Nicholas William Mall. I believe that's doctor at this point, isn't it? Dr.
It
Nicholas
is
William
doctor
Mall.
at this point.
All right, Dr. Nicholas William Mall, who is the owner of Owlman Press there in Ballarat, Australia. And we are saying hi to the crew in Bentonville, Arkansas during the International Games Day at your library. So, hey, everybody in Bentonville.
Hello.
Woo! We've been having this really great conversation with the staff there at the Bentonville Library, and they talked about, why don't you come on in and talk about gaming and talk about the design of games and the building of games for our folks here in Bentonville, or there in Bentonville, you know, whichever way in Bentonville. So Nick and I got together and we were like, well, if we were at a gaming convention and somebody was going to come on and talk about gaming, what would they say? And we had no idea whatsoever what we would say. So we went ahead and are doing a broadcast anyway, and we're going to talk about gaming. We're going to talk about a little bit about the Creative Commons license, and we're just going to have entertain you for about 30 minutes. I brought my hand puppets, so if things get desperate, we will resort to hand puppets. I want to do a little bit of a shout out to Bentonville, Arkansas, because it's actually sort of a fond place in my memory. I spent a fair percentage of my childhood traveling back and forth from Kansas to Louisiana on Highway 71. And those of you in Bentonville will know exactly where I am. We went through Bentonville, stopped and ate there a lot. I remember two kind of weird details. The golf course that's right there on the highway out south of town was really beautiful because you had this stone bluff on the left and the golf course is on the right. It was very nice. And you guys were the warning sign that we were about to get into the Smoky Mountains. And this is back in the old days when you actually had to drive up the mountain and right around the rim on 71. I'm sure you guys, some of you who are ancient like me, will remember when the highway actually went up the mountain. So I have a couple of fond memories of Bentonville. I wanted to start with that. So let's get started. Nick, are you ready to go?
I'm good.
All right, so the context here is that Nicholas designed a role-playing game called Big Damn Dryden, based on an older game of his called Big Damn Sci-Fi. And what we have been doing is sending Big Damn Dryden out into the world as a sort of a free introductory version. It's available to all of you there in the convention. I think you've got the links with you. I don't know if you have the postcards. We have some magic postcards, but I don't think you've got those, but you've got the links to the game. And I think we're going to start off talking just about how that game came to be, and then Nick, who is the actual, games guru, will sort of take over the conversation and talk about gaming in a more general sense. So what comes to me, though, is what is Big Damn Dryden and how does it come to be? Well, Big Damn Dryden is this part of a larger experience in Creative Commons publishing. Several years ago, I got really frustrated. I'm an author, write mostly short fiction, horror and science fiction primarily. And I got really frustrated with the licensing structure where I write a story and I send it off to a publisher and they buy rights and the story is now dead forever. Or if it's still alive, they own it because they bought the rights. And I could talk for a long time about that because that's sort of the center of my universe. But what I did to get around that was I created a science fiction universe. I wrote Faster Than Light travel rules, several hundred years of history, the different technologies that you would need in order to operate a science fiction universe. And I put the whole thing under the Creative Commons license, the BYSA 4.0 license. And what that license says is you are free to use the material. You don't even have to call me. I got an email from a woman who lives on the entire other side of Australia from Nick one day that said, hey, by the way, I published a book in your universe. It's the first warning that I got, right, that this book exists. You're totally free to use any of the materials in the universe. There are two conditions. Number one, you have to put what you create under the Creative Commons also. And what that allows us to do then is to grow this universe incrementally working together, right? And the other thing that you have to do is you have to cross-support everybody that you work with, right? So anybody else that's working in the universe, you have to tell your friends about them and they tell their friends about blah, 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 blah. So what we get is two things out of that. We get an absolutely massive universe. We've got 20,000, 40,000 years of history in our universe. We have, I want to say 6 novels in print. We're about to put one into print on the 30th. And so I don't know if that's number 6 or number 7. I've gotten lost. We have a role-playing game set in the universe. We're building this universe that's a Star Wars or Star Trek size, except it's free for everybody to come hang out in. It's awesome. And the other thing is we have tremendously more marketing reach. I happen to have pretty good marketing reach in Ballarat, Australia. Kind of weird, but hey, it's there because Nick and I work together in this cooperative manner under this Creative Commons. So I started all of this nonsense about 4 years ago, having a lot of fun. We're branching out now into other genres. We've started working on our steampunk genre and our horror genre. Nick is building the rules that will be the foundation of our fantasy genre eventually. We're just having a really awesome time building in this creative model. It's really cool and a lot of fun. And the point where Nick comes into it and I stop talking, which I'm sure everybody's looking forward to by now, is at the point at which we started thinking, wow, I wish we had a role-playing game. Wouldn't it be great if we had a role-playing game? We have all of this wonderful world. We have universe and spaceships and alien species and all this stuff. We should have a game for it. Well, Nick in Ballarat, Australia, working entirely independently, had built a very cool game called Big Damn Sci-Fi, which is a universe independent system, a GURP system, for science fiction role-playing game. And Nick approached us and said, dudes, we need to work together on this. We'll take the Creative Commons universe, we'll take my rule set, and we'll build a thing. And it's an awesome thing. And I think instead of talking about that thing, I'm going to turn it over to Nick, because Nick is the one who engineered the role-playing game, integrated the universes, and really knows a lot more about that stuff than I do. All right, Nick, I quit. Your turn. Go.
All right. Yeah, so, I just saw an ad on a Facebook tabletop role-play game designers group one day with Joel, looking for someone to build a sci-fi role-play game set in the Dryden universe. And I thought, a generic universe role-play game. Big Damn Sci-Fi was written on the philosophy with my wife that, a lot of rules don't necessarily make a lot of game. So we wrote this core sci-fi core rulebook that we sold for about $1.50 a piece called Big Damn Sci-Fi, and that was 2,000 words. And you can imagine people, if you flick through, 2,000 words, that's roughly what? 4 or 5 pages. Imagine, sitting next to the sort of Wizards of the Coast Star Wars and Black Crusade and all these other big tomes. It's like this little slim thing, but it did the job. It had everything that you needed to make a role-play game. It had character creation rules. It had ways for characters to be differentiated from each other. It had core stats. It had starship. We even squeezed starship combat in there. And then as we were writing sort of Big Damn Sci-Fi, we went, okay, well, we've got this little slim rule book. What can we add to it? And so we added bounty hunters to it. And then we added rules for running empires and space empires to it. Then we added just a general rules expansion with a few more species features and a few more other bells and whistles that you could put on, but it was all optional. And each of them was set at 2,000 words. So we had this series of 2,000 words books that was slowly building up from a little bit of system, from the very, the very bare bones and veneer of a role-play game, the very basis of it, to something that was becoming quite substantial. So but it was also very generic and very flexible. Not only did we have sort of stuff for, being general characters, we had stuff for bounty hunters, we had stuff for running empires. I've got still got a mecha supplement that we've just been sitting around gathering dust because we haven't had a chance to play test it yet. So it was very independent, very niche, and it very more importantly, it fitted into a very key product category on RPG now, where there was no sci-fi rulebook for about $1.50 at that point. Now there is. So we took that very generic, this very veneer of a role-play system, this very sort of generic system, and we started applying it to the Dryden universe. And what we slowly got out of that process was something that became a little bit more robust each time we kind of came back to it, each time we started looking at it. The Big Damn Sci-Fi, for instance, it didn't have any humans in it. It was completely alien. All your character differentiation was done in terms of species features. So we had to strip that out, and we started adding in ideas for humans. We started adding in the corporations. The different governments that are in the Dryden experiment are slowly appearing in this game. So what we started out with then was this thin veneer, and what we've built up is a relatively robust system. We expanded out the rules for space combat. We added ideas for hyperspace. So what you ended up with was something that was very fast, very playable, that suddenly became a more of a, I guess, a fully formed role-play game with a specific universe. Okay, so that was step one. We've got this core book now that's sitting there, and I think it's out and about a bit now, isn't it, Joel?
It is. It's available on RPG Now. It's available on Amazon. It's searchable through Backer's Books on Print, so you should be able to go to any bookstore on the planet and ask for it, and they would at least be able to order you a copy. Available print and electronic versions also. So,
Fantastic.
yeah, right on.
All right, now that we've got the shameless plug section out of the way. Well, no, let's be honest and call that moment what it is.
Right.
But also the necessary one. Oh, geez, my eyes went freaky then. Sorry, I can see myself in the camera. It's a little surreal. Yeah, so now we've got this base game and one of the things I find with you start out with your base game, right? We've got this basic sort of veneer of the Dryden universe there, and that's mainly then focused on the corporations. What we're doing now is we're slowly adding in detail. So we've got this. If you imagine this sketch there of the universe that has these three main systems run by the three major corporations: Cirque, the dirtiest players in the game; Lynn, this old venerable corporation; and TerraCorp, the sort of old steady old school folks. Militaristic humanity, I guess you'd call them. So we've got this game based around these three corporations in the three sections of space. And it's very terrestrial based. It's very straight down the line. It's a cyberpunk noir in which you'll play sort of the freelance bootleg for the corporation, solving all those other problems that they won't send the Joes from accounting to deal with. So you've got that game, and then we've started looking at that going, well, what do we need to add? What hasn't been filled out yet? Where are the blank areas? So the first book supplement book that's coming out in December, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Joel.
Yes, we're trying to hit the December 6th date. We will definitely hit before the end of December.
Fantastic. It's called The Bleeding Mind, and that adds psychics to the universe. And the idea of that is that we've had it came out of playtesting that we had almost this deliberate rules area that hadn't been covered yet, where we had limited psychic traits, but it wasn't fully developed in the sense that people felt they could really play a psychic character. So we've gone, well, that's our market. That's what people have said is missing. So that's our first point of expansion. And in doing so, in fleshing out the idea of psychics, we haven't just sort of stopped with psychic phenomena. It's almost become a sort of a manifesto of how marginalization works within the corporatocracies, the system of how marginalization works in the Dryden universe. So what happens when, let's say, you don't want to play in the corporate system, you don't want to play a corporate bootleg, you want to step out of that system? Who do you end up working for? Who do you end up having to deal with? And it's almost this underground sort of feeling about it.
And I want to jump back in there to mention that it's wonderfully reciprocal. I saw a great conversation between Nick the other day and Damian Roach, who's one of our authors in Boston, talking about something that happens in one of the stories that hasn't been published yet and how that would manifest as a rule. And how you would build the rule set around that. So we have this wonderful sort of ongoing conversation between our artists and our authors and Nick, who is our game designer. You know, the author or the artist goes, well, I want X, and Nick goes, well, the rules for that would be, and it's wonderful to watch the universe grow and become more playable as we move forward. Sorry, I had to get in for just a second. I'm done.
No, that's okay. That's a very good point, and also though, like to a certain degree, being I guess the smaller kids on the playground, we'll say, you know, the smaller kids on the playground, we have more of a ongoing dialogue with the people who are playing our games. So, pardon me. So there's a lot of times where people pop up and go, well, hey, what about this? And we go, well, yeah, that's a great idea. And, you know, it might not necessarily fit into, say, the next book or, you know, one in the immediate future, but it gets put in a nice big file that I've got. And we have this sort of ongoing sort of file of conversation with the players, with the play testers, of stuff that would be very cool to add. It's just a matter of finding a place for it. And I think even as well, quite a few of our playtest groups, their player characters are being canonized in the universe as NPCs that are appearing in the back of books. And there's no reason to say that in the near future that won't extend as well to general players as well. So I guess to move on from Big Damn Dryden then, yeah, no, let's not move on from that. one sec. Yeah, to just it becomes this collaborative experience between not only the creators in the universe and the creators in the Creative Commons sort of sector, but also with the ongoing conversation with the playtesters and with the players themselves that almost builds this, I guess, organic tree of a universe. Whereas if you're playing something like Shadowrun or Vampire the Requiem, you could add as much content as you wanted to your own personal game with very little sort of, I guess, space for that to break through and grow and become canonized. I think the wonderful thing about Big Damn Dryden and the way it works, and indeed, like I think Owlman in general, is that because we're smaller, we have this sort of opportunity to have an ongoing conversation with people playing our games and kind of incorporate and grow them through, I guess, wider collaboration, wider conversation.
I want to jump back into that just to give a very specific example of that. The very first person to ever play a psychic character in the Dryden experiment did so before the rules were fully written. Chelsea Ann in our Manhattan Play group started a character named Posey, who is just a little bit dangerous and scary, but very, very psychic. And Posey has now gone from a character in a playtest group in a Manhattan, Kansas, to an NPC who is in the rule set for the Bleeding Mind rules expansion. And when we do the Bleeding Minds launch party, we always have Nick host a game and GM a game for our launch parties. When we do the Bleeding Mind, we're actually having Chelsea Ann get on with us and play Posey as guest starring in the playtest that night. So just the level of integration that we work with, you know, the creatives, the players, the gamers, they are all at the table, and we're building this really awesome thing together. So anyway, Chelsea Ann and Posey, very, very weird character. A lot of creepiness going on there. All right, I'm sorry, I'm out again. Please go on, Nick.
No. I don't know. Should we talk about the game itself, the rules, or have I kind of riffed on about Big Damn Dryden enough, Joel?
You know, my feeling, Nick, is that the rules are wonderful and they're accessible, and everybody at the conference is going to have at Bill is going to have access to them. What I would kind of rather talk about is why indie games are important, why what the folks in Bill are doing is important. You want to talk about the theory of games as literature. You're our guru and architect for games.
All right, why indie games are important. All right. It's the most, I guess, commonly written form of literature that people generally present in some form. Game writing. You know, you think about playing a role-play game, the pace, the amount of depth that you can get into a character, the amount of effort that you have to put in, and every game master out there is going to know what I'm talking about, the amount of effort that you have to put in for something that will possibly be ignored when the players choose to pick door number 3 that you didn't even realize was there. Or they want to deal with the dragon instead of playing it. Or, you know, you get that one, I'm trying to not swear here, you know, that one player at the table goes, hey, let's see how much hair I can make that GM pull out tonight. You game masters know what I'm talking about there. So writing a role-play game is, and I am a doctor of literature, so I tend to riff really heavily on the idea that role-play games are a form of literature, and they're a very niche, specific form of literature. It's unacknowledged for a large degree by I guess, the mainstream, both academia, the marketplace. It's still very niche, very hidden. And I think in that sense then, why play a big game? Why play a game that you will never have any meaningful impact on, that you will spend 6, 8, 12, 16 hours preparing a master-crafted session and mini setting for, if you're never actually going to be able to enter into that sort of dialogue with the publishers and with the sort of game designers, and you're never going to have your contribution in general acknowledged. Now, that's not true across the whole board, you know. Wizards of the Coast make some effort every time they bring out a new edition of D&D to do the sort of pre-promotion through playtesting. And I know Pinnacle Entertainment do a wonderful job of keeping this ongoing dialogue with their players. But there's a point at the end of the day, where I think playing indie games in general and taking games to a convention is almost this different kind of performance. It's this special kind of performance and this special kind of presentation of your literature and your work, where you're in this very raw, this very open, almost street performance level of dialogue and engagement with other people. And the feedback is typically fast, it's typically raw, and it's typically instantaneous. If you plot hammer that conclusion as a game master, if you plot hammer that conclusion in an adventure, players are going to let you know they feel plot hammered. Case in point as well, as a player, if you push your I'm just playing my character too far, there is going to be some sort of consequence. And I was actually running a game session last night where the player characters murdered another player character because he tried to do the secret deal with the bad guy right in front of them. And, you know, it was just this moment of, you know, this really raw criticism for him as a player where he was just like, but I was whispering, and it's like, and they said, but you were doing it right in front of us. We could hear you. We rolled to see if we could hear you, and we could hear everything. So there is this sense that the criticism is raw and instantaneous. So in that sense, then, I think playing an indie game and taking a game to a convention is a very special thing that everyone should try and do at least once in their lives, whether it be as a player or a game master. I think everyone should be game mastering, partly because I find I'm constantly the person who is the game master. But at the same time, you know, it's something everyone should be doing on every level. They should be trying game mastering, they should be trying running, they should be trying world design. And they should be getting involved in this sort of niche form of literature that's almost collaborative, that's not quite performative, that isn't quite a novel, but it's this wonderful experience where everyone gets together and builds and plays and works together to have this ongoing literary, fantasy, imaginative experience.
You know,
and on that level, sorry.
I just wanted to get in there. While you were talking, I remembered a line from the movie The Dark Crystal. Kira asks Jen, "What's writing?" And he says, "Writing is words that stay." Well, as an author, I think about this a lot. You know, this is how I make my words stay so that somebody else can read them. And you've just added this really interesting level of interactivity to that by saying that role-playing games are a form of literature. You're saying the words don't just have to stay; they can now move. They can now be dynamic. We can create characters around them. We can create these environments dynamically through our shared imagination as we sit around our piles of dice as we role play. And I just wanted to stop on that moment because you just advanced the idea of words that stay for me. You've now given me words that move. That's very cool. That unscripted moment there, but I enjoyed that a lot.
But because they're words that move, they're also words that don't stay. It doesn't matter if you're running, say, a pre-scripted adventure that you've purchased for your particular game. Those words don't stay. Every time you run that adventure with either the same or a different group of players, chances are their characters are going to be different. They're going to be approaching it differently, even if you run it for the same characters with the same players before. You know they're going to be expecting all the major twists and turns. Like, I remember playing a Dungeons and Dragons game once where one of the players had actually played that exact adventure earlier that day with the same character. And there was this moment where these orcs were meant to burst through this door, and it was meant to be this dramatic trap. And he's like, "Guys, I know what to do." And he ran over to this door and he threw it open. He goes, "Look, orcs!" And the game master's just gone, "It's an empty room."
Yeah.
And then they come in through the secret hatch in the floor. And he freaked out. He just lost his shit that day. So there's a sense there that while you've got words that stay, like Big Damn Dryden, we've got like a whole lot of words about the universe that stick right there. But at the same time, every time a group picks that up and plays with it, those words are going to move, and they're going to move in a different direction, assumably a different direction. Every time. As
long as the universe continues to grow, there will always be new content for the players to play.
Exactly. But even if the universe doesn't continue to grow, even if, let's say, God forbid, right, an asteroid hit Earth later on today and we were all dead, We're all just like freaking bones in the ground, man. And aliens came down and they picked up they picked up, excavated this game store, and they picked up our stuff, and they picked up, like Dungeons and Dragons, and Psychobilly, Apocalypse 45, and all this other stuff. They flicked through them and they started playing them. Like, even though there'd be no new content for those games unless the aliens started producing them, which would be a beautiful thought. But even if they picked them up and didn't add any new content, right? They're still going to make unique characters.
Right.
They're still going to make mini settings. They're still going to improvise a whole bunch of things. Like, if the players, say, I don't know, run off to a tavern and, get into a bar fight and then get shanghaied by slavers on a ship somewhere and taken out to some unknown islands, they're still going to make new content, even though the game itself is not officially going forward.
Right.
And I think that's why it's important for people to play, getting back to the point, I think that's why it's important for people to play indie games, so those games can kind of keep going forward, and that those games do go forward in some sort of meaningful manner, as opposed to something that will be pushed forward artificially through continued releases and continued developments external to the players themselves. I'm a great fan of games of only getting a core book for games now. Like, I used to get supplement after supplement for things like World of Darkness. Like, anyone who's played old World of Darkness will know how chronically addictive buying supplements for that was. I've since scaled back my game purchasing to only buying core books, because that's the only thing I really need to run the game, and I can kind of push it forward in a bunch of different directions from that one sort of central idea.
So, Nick, we're coming up on the 30-minute mark, which is what we told the folks in Bentonville that we would shoot for. To finish this up, we need to be positive and say great things about Bentonville and International Games Day and Dryden all rolled up into one. Go, Nick!
I hear Arkansas is fantastic. I've since learned to pronounce the name properly instead of calling it Arkansas.
That's it is not Arkansas.
It sounds like a fantastic place, although I have not been off my continent. Big Damn Dryden is a fantastic game. Quick rules, fast system, infinitely paced, very philosophical game design. Roleplay games are literature. Play lots of roleplay games. You should all be out there making your own roleplay games and developing your own systems, because it is niche literature that needs more support out there in the wider world. Don't let academics talk unscripted. We waffle.
All right. Well, I think that was a beautiful tag. And for everybody there in Bentonville or any of the other International Games Day folks, thank you so much for inviting Dryden in and welcoming us to participate in your event. The best place to find us actually is on Facebook. We have a website that we never update. But if you want to meet some of the other artists and some of the other authors who work in the environment, stop by the Facebook author and artist page, Dryden author and artist page. There's a fan page for Big Damn Dryden. There's fan pages for several of our books. And, stop by Amazon or your local bookstore and see what's going on. But most importantly, get back to gaming. I really think Nick's point is very valid. We don't just have to read the adventures of others or go to see the adventures of others on movies. We can build our own adventures through the games that we choose to play. I thank you very much for being with us here today, and I want you all to get back to gaming. So thank you very much. And Nick, I'm about to turn it off. Anything else?
No, get back to gaming. That's the important thing there. Roll those dice, get those crits, give the game master a headache.
All right. Way to go. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Catch you all.